If you're finishing your PhD and thinking about moving into industry, I bet you ask yourself this question. Does my first job after my PhD have to be the perfect job? And let me tell you, I see this all the time in the coaching work I do with the Job Accelerator program that we run at Almami. And I think most PhDs overthink that question and they overthink that decision. And honestly, I get why you do that or why you may think about this as a really big decision, because this is where we come from, right? In academia, every decision feels quite huge, to be honest. So when you start your PhD, you usually sign a contract for anywhere between 3 and 6 years, potentially, depending on the country where you're at. And once you're in, you're kind of locked in if you want to get the degree. So obviously, this is a massive decision that you're making in that instance. And if you think about a postdoc, it's also a very huge commitment. Many of they move cities for their projects to join a new lab and to commit to a topic. And again, it's usually 3 to 4 years, depending if you need more time to actually get your publication out. So what I'm trying to say is when in academia, a lot of moves or many moves that we make, they feel actually quite permanent. And obviously, as you're thinking about leaving academia and that's the only environment you know, that mindset sticks with you. So what is it that actually happens when PhDs go out and look for industry jobs? So most actually think, wow, this next step needs to be perfect. It needs to be the perfect role. It needs to be the perfect company. It needs to be the perfect team or the perfect long-term fit. Because subconsciously, the way we're trained, it feels like if I choose wrong, I might be stuck here for years. And this is what we're trained on from academia. And I quickly want to pause here and say it makes complete sense. After years of academia, leaving often means failure. And of course, you approach your first industry job in the same way. But that's not how industry works. And I want to go a little bit into how it actually works and hope I can help you to shift your mindset. So, the big shift that I wish you to understand from this video and you take with you as a take home message is, in industry, the normal turnaround time for a role is very different compared to academia. So now, of course, it depends a little bit on the industry and the country and the lifestyle and all of what you want, right? But very often, staying in a role for around 2 years is completely normal, sometimes even less, which means you're not committed for the next 5 years of your life when you take an industry job. When you take an industry job, you have flexibility, you can move, and you can also pivot if you feel like, you're looking for something else. And knowing that you can leave if it's not right, I think that changes everything and takes a lot of pressure away when making that step into industry. So for most PhD in the transition, the most important thing about the first job is not to be perfect, but really get that foot into industry. Especially right now in 2026, the market is highly competitive and it's really tough. So fresh graduates are competing with people who have already years of industry experience. So getting that first industry role on your CV, it's really huge and it changes the game. Once you have it on, you will see life will be a bit different. And because recruiters will look at you differently and hiring managers will look at you differently. So the next move actually becomes much easier because you're no longer an academic who has to make the mindset shift to a new environment. Now you're someone who actually understands how industry works. So I get the question from PhDs. They say, but Elena, what if I don't like the job? And this is a question I get a lot because obviously you have never worked in that job, never in that environment. It's a completely valid question. And my honest, simple answer is that's okay. If you enter a job and realize, oh, wait, this isn't really what I expected this to be, or I don't actually enjoy this as much as I thought I would, that is not a failure. That's information. It's your first industry experience, and you're just learning how industry works, how teams operate, what you like and what you don't like. And that learning is incredibly valuable. So I would encourage you to think of this also like you experiment, and you need to experience sometimes to really understand this is actually not what I want. So also dare to be okay to get into a job where you expected something else, but it's information. It gives you information on what to look next for. So let me give you a concrete example of one of the PhDs that we work with in our Job Accelerator program. She actually moved into the role of a data scientist, and she did really well. And I think within 6 months, she was already promoted to principal data scientist. So she absolutely rocked it. And now she has been at the company for 9 months, and she's already thinking about her next step, moving into a different environment because she feels like she wants to learn something new. So now actually she has industry experience, she has confidence, and she has more options because she has already been in the industry environment. And she learned a ton of what she wants to move forward with and maybe what she wants to leave behind. Now, I also want to say this really clearly. I'm not encouraging you to do job hopping and find a new job every 6 months. That's not the message here at all. What I'm saying is simply take the pressure out of your first job in industry. See it as a jumping board and not a final destination. This is what I want to invite you with this video, to see it as getting a foot into industry and seeing what comes next. What does it feel like to work in industry? Your first job can help you to learn how industry works, understand business context, and gain some domain knowledge. And also, of course, fill specific gaps in your skill set. For example, let's say you want to move into product analytics, but right now you're more on the technical side. Your first job can help understand product thinking, stakeholder communication, and business trade-offs, for example. You already got the technical skills. Now you added product insights, and then you move. That's a way how careers and industries are built, step by step and not all at once. What I really want to emphasize, because I think a lot of PhDs worry about that too, will the first job determine the trajectory of my career? And it will absolutely not decide the rest of your professional life. So what matters is that the job is good enough, that you like the team, that you don't hate going to work, for example, and that you're learning. I think many of us can relate to this feeling of where we have been in a situation during our PhD where we felt like, I don't want to be here anymore, but I have to push through in order to get that degree. And that pressure is quite real. And I also want to remind you, as you're moving into industry, that chapter is over. As I said before, in industry, you have the ability to move around if you feel like it's not a great fit. And I think just knowing that, having that option in case you're not extremely happy, should already take a lot of pressure off this decision. So if I had to summarize this for you, I would say your first job doesn't have to be the perfect one. It has to be a step into industry and a place where you can learn and grow. In my opinion, that's basically it. I would recommend, don't overthink. Don't freeze yourself with pressure because you feel like you need the perfect role. Don't treat it like a 5-year academic commitment, because it's not. And remember, you have options now, and that's a really good thing. So if you're currently stressing about choosing the perfect industry job after your PhD, I'm inviting you to take a breath. You're not stuck. You're not going to be locked in, and you got this. And you have everything you need. Dare to jump and dare to explore and learn as you explore. And if you enjoyed this video, I would also recommend you to check out the video about Is My PhD Work Experience, which I will link here, because I think it could be quite relevant in the way you position and market yourself to industry jobs.